that you didn't get one. But this is a classic haunted house story, right? Very. It's kind of got a lot of classic conventions of a haunted house story. You have the scientist character who's out to prove whether or not supernatural phenomenon are real, right? No, but at the same, you have the old creaky house. This is a house that's supposedly born bad, right? Sure, she does a great job describing the house. Like, what makes it so creepy? What makes it so uncanny? Something that we can ask ourselves today in setting up the novel. Um, but one of the things that makes this novel exceptional, though, is just the richness of the characters. Right? This isn't a novel that just has cookie cutter characters that you could interchange. Right? This is a novel with deep, pretty layered characters. Eleanor is one of my class favorite characters. Like I think she's really interesting. She's we can talk about what you guys think of her as well. Shirley Jackson was a writer. Let's see, what dates did she live? She did most of her writing from the 40s through the 60s. That's when she did most of her writing. She died at a very young age. Let me actually refresh myself. When did she die? What was the cause of death? I think if I remember right, she had a really weird death. Um, yeah, she lived from 1916 to 1965, so she lived about 50 years. Um, no, she died of a heart condition at 48. She was married to a professor. I do know that their marriage was really tumultuous. Um, like I think like the guy cheated on her and all this type of stuff a lot, based on what I remember. But yeah, I think they. Let's see, where did he teach? Should have refreshed myself on this. Yeah, it says according to Jackson's biographers, her marriage was plagued by her husband's last name was Hyman, which is kind of hilarious, right? But her marriage was plagued by Hyman's infidelities, notably with his students. And she reluctantly agreed to his proposition of maintaining an open relationship. He also controlled their finances, including her profits from her books. So she was very much trapped in this god awful marriage, like when she was a writer. Probably didn't help her health conditions any.
If
She
only there would have been some kind of unsolved accident.
right, right. Yeah, the guy seemed pretty scummy, um, to say the least. Um, that type that type of thing drives me crazy. Like I can't stand. I'm gonna go on my soapbox here. I can't stand the fact that some of my colleagues do that kind of thing. Like it's awful. I think um, there's one professor. He's in the 1960s. I still don't think there was a film that tops the 1960s version, which we're going to watch next week. Um, but there's also a 1999 version. That version's kind of really stupid, but it's a lot of fun too. That's the best way I know to. It's dumb fun. Um, it's got Liam Neeson as the doctor. Catherine Zeta-Jones plays Theodora. Um, Owen Wilson plays Luke. Right? It's got a really weird cast in that way. Um, the woman who plays Eleanor was the woman who was the wife in the Conjuring movie. I can't remember her name right off, but she did Yeah, that movie was a lot of cheese. So that one's more commonly available. You can find that movie pretty easily on like HBO and stuff. The '60s one's a little harder to find.
With the modern series that's on Netflix they did, I really dislike how they made Luke a drug addict. That after reading the bit that I've read so far in the book, that really rubbed me the wrong way. Like an assumption that anyone who does bad things or steals is automatically a drug addict. Like, I don't know, I just did not like that.
Yeah, Theodora too. In the book, they play up her sexuality very subtly. Right? Maybe it's just the fact that it's the '60s and they had different mores then. But the book insinuates that she's a lesbian, right? I don't know if you guys picked up on that with the subtext here. I can point you to the passage where it kind of insinuates it. But in the show, I remember the first episode, like she has a racy sex scene and all this stuff too. So I was just like, yeah, maybe she was in the book, maybe she wasn't, right? But they really played that up for the shock value in the TV show. Um, I need to give the TV show another go. Like I watched the first episode and I wasn't feeling it. Maybe I need to give it another go. I'm guessing you've seen the whole thing, Nicole. Any of the other two of you watched that show on Netflix, Haunting a Hill House?
I will say it's the only scary series that's actually frightened me in a very long time.
I really like the director who does that show. I think I mentioned the other day, Mike Flanagan. I know you haven't seen it, Lauren, because you don't watch horror movies. You got stuck in the wrong English 102 class, probably. Right, so hopefully after the class you will lose your fear. Right, if nothing else. Right, so yeah, so diving into the book, then there's lots of ways we can dive in. We can definitely talk about characters. We can talk about the house. Let's talk about the house first. We talked. Really, the only other haunted house story we've encountered in the class so far has been Fall of the House of Usher. Right, that was the great Poe story about the haunted house. Doing a comparison of that with this book would be interesting, I think. Um, but if you look on even like the very first paragraph of the story is a great passage. Um, very first paragraph of the story, if you want to pull it up. So it says, no live organism can continue for long to exist sanely under conditions of absolute reality. Even larks and katydids are supposed by some to dream. Hill House, not sane, stood by itself against its hills, holding darkness within. It had stood so for 80 years and might stand for 80 more. Within, walls continued upright, bricks mapped neatly, floors were firm, and doors were sensibly shut. Silence lay steadily against the wood and stone of Hill House, and whatever walked there walked alone. Right, so that's one of the great passages really early on that describes Hill House. Um, they also describe it when Eleanor first comes up on Hill House, like she gets creeped out by it, like the way that it kind of like pops up on her. It's so like overwhelming. It's page 29 in my version of the book. I know some of you guys are using e-readers and stuff, but it's in section 2, part 2 of this part. This is another one. She says, Eleanor says, here I am in the blue room of Hill House, she said half aloud, although it was real enough, and beyond all question, the blue room. There were blue dimity curtains over the 2 windows, which looked out over the roof of the veranda onto the lawn. and a blue figured rug on the floor, and a blue spread on the bed, and a blue quilt at the foot. The walls, dark woodwork to shoulder height, were blue figured paper above with the design of tiny blue flowers, wreathed and gathered and delicate. Perhaps someone had once hoped to lighten the air of the blue room in Hill House with a dainty wallpaper, not seeing how such a hope would evaporate in Hill House, leaving only the faintest hint of its existence, like an almost inaudible echo of sobbing far away. Ellipsis. Eleanor shook herself, turning to see the room complete. It had an unbelievably faulty design, which left it chillingly wrong in all its dimensions, so that the walls seemed always in one direction a fraction longer than the eye could endure, and in another direction a fraction less than the barest possible tolerable length. This is where they want me to sleep, Eleanor thought incredulously. What nightmares are waiting, shadowed in those high corners? What breath of mindless fear will drift across my mouth? And shook herself again. Really, she told herself, really, Eleanor? So that's a passage that kind of shows what's weird about this house, right? Something's off. Even in like the way that it's designed architecturally, it seems off. Like either the dimensions seem an inch too long, an inch too short, right? She talks about how it seemed like it was built in a hurry, right? Especially the second and third floors, how it seemed like it was built in this great hurry to just get it done. We also learn of the weird backstory of Hill House here in the opening parts. Dr. Montague talks about how, there's originally this really rich guy named Hugh Crane had the house. But then it passed down to his daughters, and then there was this whole complicated thing with the two daughters. The younger sister stole the older sister's man, but then the older sister decided to live in a Hill House. She lived there with a housekeeper. Again, that's kind of suggestive.
Was it confirmed that the younger sister stole the older one's man, or was that just Eleanor's imagination?
I think I just read it just now. I think Dr. Montague said that, yeah, she really did. Yeah, some of the stuff is Eleanor's imagination, though. That's something we'll talk about. Like she imagines like kids playing in the halls and all this type of stuff. But yeah, we learn that whole story. Right? She has a housekeeper. She mysteriously dies. The housekeeper gets the house, and then after that, this sister just persecutes the housekeeper until she kills herself. Right? Then it gets passed down to the housekeeper's distant cousin, which is how Luke's family gets the house. So it's got this really weird, complicated history, and that's going to keep unfolding as the book progresses. Like you guys will find out why the place is even haunted as we go through it. I'm not going to spoil it for now, but you will find that out. So I don't know. What did you guys think of the setting of Hill House? She's setting it up pretty interestingly here with lots of these passages. Thoughts?
I think I think a huge part of the theme is what is reality and what is not, and what basis you can judge that. And I don't know. I think this is shaping up to be a really, really interesting book. I like it so far.
So what is reality or what is imagination? That's kind of where you're going with that.
Where you draw the line between reality and imagination. Because I know for some people, like people who have schizophrenia and things like that, I don't know if you'd say hallucinations or imagination, that is their reality.
Right. Remember in that was a theme in that movie we watched, In the Mouth of Madness too, if you remember, right? They said, what is an insane person? Well, they're not the majority of people who say that what is sane. right? So it's very similar to kind of theme here. But it is told through Eleanor's perspective. We do know Eleanor is very highly imaginative. Um, that's something that happened. You were right to point this theme out, Nicole. This is going to be a point of conflict as the novel progresses. And Eleanor sees stuff, she feels stuff, and everybody else doesn't. And she's like, everybody else is like, is this woman just trying to be in attention, trying to just get attention? Right. So that's something that's going to keep coming up. On the other two of you think of the setting of Hill House, the uncanniness of it. Would you want to go to this place to hang out for a weekend?
I thought it made it very creepy. It gave me chills as I was reading it, but then again, as me never watching anything with horror, that's probably just me. I was sitting around looking for creatures around me as I was reading it too, as I got deeper into it.
You know, he was just looking for the stone lines, right? That she, as she keeps talking about over and over, the gargoyles, right? And this place has all of that and more, right? All the something is really creepy about like those weird like stone gargoyles and stone animals and stuff. Like, I don't know why that's so creepy, but it is.
When I was in Scotland, there was one building that we went to. I don't know what building it was, but it had like a lot of like animal statues and stuff, and it was insanely creepy. I mean, I don't know why, but it just scared the crap out of me.
Yeah, it's so well. Part of it's just so foreign to us, right? We don't see that much of that type of Gothic architecture in America. Um, Ryan, what did you think of the setting of this, the Hill House? Was this a place that you would hang out on the weekend? Right?
Honestly, the way my family is, I would live there.
Like Eleanor, right? Get the heck out of Dodge.
I would live there because my family is all into ghosts and all that. It's right up our alley. It's like my dad saying he wants to visit that prison that's haunted because he wants to stay the night there so he can see if he can find something. I don't know. I'm weird.
A place y'all should go. Have you heard of the Shawnee amusement park in like Herndon or past there?
No.
It is very, very interesting. You should look into it.
I might do that.
Yeah, it's really cool. Once you get past Herndon Mountain, going towards Princeton, that's the way that it's on. Just past Matoka, up that way. Yeah, it's this old amusement park where a lot of like really strange deaths happen to children, and apparently it's on an Indian burial ground and all kinds of stuff. So that's a local place that's very gives you the willies just being close to it. I've been to it around Halloween. They usually have like a little carnival thing on Halloween.
I know they used to, but do they still like? I've heard that if you contact the owners of the land, they'll let you like stay the night there.
Yeah, you got to pay them, I think, but yeah, they will let you do that. Now that made like these ghost hunter TV shows and all that stuff. That place did. I'm sure you guys have driven. If you've ever rode across Herndon Mountain towards Princeton, I'm sure you guys have drove by it at some point. I'm sure you have, Ryan. I'm sure you've went that way. You went to Princeton before. You live in Mullins.
Yeah, I'd say I have, but remembering it's a different question.
Yeah, it's just past Matoka, up that way. Well, you might have too, Lauren. I don't know if you've ever been to Princeton that way.
We used to travel that way to get to Smith Mountain, but once they started putting all them red lights on Herndon Mountain, we stopped going that way.
Yeah. Are those still up?
All of them are still up.
Yeah, it's bad going towards Logan too. Like I can't stand going that way, the one towards Logan. If I have to go to Logan, I'd almost rather drive to Charleston and then on down than go that way. So yeah, I mean, that's a I can speak for experience, but that's a place where when I'm around it, even just like driving by it, I kind of get that uneasy type of feeling, right? That uncanny type of feeling. The asylum in Weston, I think it was you who just mentioned just now, Nicole. That place also gives you weird feelings just being inside of it. Um, Ryan just disconnected. I'm sure we'll be back. Yeah, that also gives you weird feelings being inside of it. I went there last November around Thanksgiving time, and it nothing. The only weird thing that happened when I was in there was a tour guide turned a flashlight on, just like a common mechanical flashlight, like set it in a room. Apparently, she was like talking to a spirit or something. She's like turned the flashlight off. The flashlight went off. Right. I don't think. I can't imagine any way you could fake that with that type of flashlight. So that was weird and spooky. That's
Hey, if I disappear again, my power is flickering, so I don't know how long I'll be here because the wind is blowing super hard.
yeah, it's blowing really hard out here too. I had to shut my windows.
Sorry to interrupt again.
No, you're good. You're good.
There's one place in Mullins that really gives me the creeps just walking by it. The bridge, so like you know where the caution light is, and you can turn into Mullins. And you keep going straight. There's that bridge, and then there's the white building that's just recently been worked on. Well, I walk my dog early every morning, and every time I walk by there, it always really freaks me out. It's just a very ominous feeling surrounds that place.
Are you talking about like you turn right going into downtown, or you go straight going towards the Waynes and up that?
No, it's like at the caution light, you turn right, and it's right before you get to the Mullins Middle School, that white building on the right. If you go straight, you'll be beside the middle school.
Yeah, that's interesting. Can you even explain why it gives you the creeps, or it just does?
It just looks, well, I've been in it before. Me, my mom, and my fiance went in just to mess around because he said he was walking by and heard some stuff. And we walked in, and the doors in it are very small. Like you have to literally hunch to go through the doors, and I'm only 5'6". And it just looks evil for some reason. And also there's like a Bible quote in one of the windows. And anytime that there's something like that around a building and it's not a church, I get the creeps. It's just weird.
Right. You think, oh man, a serial killer could have lived here, right? That kind of feeling. So yeah. So Jackson does do a pretty good job of setting the mood here, right? I think we're all in agreement on this front. Like that's something that the movies have struggled to do, I think. So you can imagine this place, Hill House, like in all its weird dimensions. Like I think this is a case where the book could help you imagine it more than a film. Like, because I haven't seen a film that quite captures the spookiness of this place just yet. Maybe the show does. I don't know. But the two films that have been done, I don't think either one of them do a great job of it.
I found it interesting that Eleanor, even after, because I think a core part of her character is just her imagination, and the fact that through her whole journey to the house.
You good? With our daily the parrot daily contribution to discussion from the parrot, right? It's part of tradition.
He had very strong feelings about that bit of our conversation. But I found it strange that, you know, she was literally searching for something bigger, something magical, something fantastical. And then she finds it and she doesn't want it. I found it interesting, which I understand because it was scary. But even if it was scary, there's still a part of you that would be intrigued if that was a core part of who you were, you know?
Right. Her whole journey there is really interesting. It's a really interesting little part of the novel. She keeps saying this journey's end and lovers meeting, right? She keeps repeating that to herself. She stops and admires the scenery a couple of times. She has that weird exchange where she stops in Hillsdale and drinks coffee and has that little weird exchange with the waitress and random guy in there. And also, let me point you to this passage. This is a really interesting passage to talk about Eleanor. That is, pretty early on during that chapter, section 4 of part 1. It's the little girl in this restaurant is saying that, wanting to like have a cup where she could see the stars or something, and the dad's like, no, you can't have the cup, just drink. Right? Eleanor says, don't do it. Eleanor told the little girl, insist on your cup of stars. Once they have trapped you into being like everyone else, you will never see your cup of stars again. Don't do it. And the little girl glanced at her and smiled a little subtle, dimpling, wholly comprehending smile, and shook her head stubbornly at the glass. Brave girl, Eleanor thought. Wise, brave girl. So, break out of the norm, right? Use your imagination, right? That's something that she seems to be insinuating here fairly early. But Eleanor's trapped, right? She's trapped in this awful family situation, right? We learn that she raised her mother or helped her mother as her caretaker for like 10 plus years. She never had a life of her own. How could she? She spent all her time with her mother. Meanwhile, her sister has a life and gets married, and the sister tries to domineer over her. You know, we learn about that. So it's a very much an act of rebellion, her taking this car from her sister. Well, as she said, she paid half the payments on it, so the car should be half hers. So she's very much a rich character. She's coming into Hill House with a lot of baggage, right? To say the least. What did the two of you think about Eleanor's baggage? Do you think this makes her interesting? Do you think that if this house really is bad, that it can prey on someone like her? What do you think?
I had to step away for a second. What was the question?
I said, considering how highly imaginative Eleanor is, considering all of her baggage that she has from her family, you know, do you think it's possible? Do you think it's possible that if this house really is bad, that it can prey on someone like her?
Oh, 100%. I think that any kind of mental or emotional distress is viewed as weakness by entities or energies that don't have good intent, and that they will definitely take advantage of that.
Right.
This is kind of like a little example. My mom's sister, when she was in high school, went through some kind of really bad emotional stuff. And shortly after that happened, they had a lot of very scary stuff happening in their house, like candles would fly across the room and shatter. Chairs would turn on their own. A lot of really, really weird stuff would happen.
Yeah, people who play with Ouija boards deal with that kind of thing too, right? It seems like it preys on whatever's on your mind at the time. Maybe that's. I've always thought that that's perhaps subconscious when you play with those things. Like your mind subconsciously moves the little pointer. That's always been my theory, at least. But Lauren, what do you think of this character, Eleanor, and all of her baggage that she seems to have?
I feel like if there's something in the house, it will use her imagination against her and make her see all kinds of different things, whether they are making her see it or not.
And I think also it would use that as a weapon to kind of keep the other residents, keep the wool over their eyes pretty much, and keep them not believing. Because, if some people, like, if skeptics were to really find hard evidence for things like ghosts and whatnot, a lot of effort would be put into getting rid of them and to looking into it more. And if, entities like that are intelligent, they definitely don't want that. Like, they want to be left alone and left to their ways.
Right? Yeah, I think you're right. If we ever do find out for a scientific fact that they do exist, I think you're right. That humans are naturally so inclined to fear that we would go out of our way to try to purge them, right? So good. So I think we're setting up nicely how this character is going to keep working through the book. I think I even already spoiled it for you. Like some stuff will happen that she notices and other characters don't. That'll be the question: is it real or is it her imagination? That's as that'll happen as we keep going further. We got Theodora's character. We should probably talk about really quick too. Passage that I wanted to bring up about her is in the first couple of pages of the story, section 2, part 1. So I'll just read the whole paragraph. It says Theodora, that was as much name as she used. Her sketches were signed Theo, and on her apartment door and the window of her shop and her telephone listing and her pale stationery in the bottom of the lovely photograph of her which stood on the mantel, the name was always only Theodora. Theodora was not at all like Eleanor. Duty and conscience were for Theodora attributes which belonged properly to Girl Scouts. Theodora's world was one of delight and soft collars. She had come onto Dr. Montague's list because going laughing into the laboratory, bringing with her a rush of floral perfume, she had somehow been able, amused, and excited over her own incredible skill to identify correctly 18 cards out of 20, held up by an assistant out of sight and hearing. The name of Theodora shone in the records of the laboratory and so came inevitably to Dr. Montague's attention. Theodora had been entertained by Dr. Montague's first letter and answered it out of curiosity, perhaps the awakened knowledge in Theodora, which told her the names of symbols on cards held out of sight, urged her on her way toward Hill House. And yet fully intended to decline the invitation. Yet perhaps the stirring, urgent sense again, when Dr. Montague's confirming letter arrived, Theodora had been tempted and had somehow plunged blindly, wantonly into a violent quarrel with the friend with whom she shared an apartment. Things were said on both sides which only time could eradicate. Theodora had deliberately and heartlessly smashed the lovely little figurine her friend had carved of her, and her friend had crudely ripped to shreds the volume of Alfred de Musset, which had been a birthday present from Theodora, taking particular pains with the page which bore Theodora's loving, teasing inscription. These acts were, of course, unforgettable. Before they could laugh over them together, time would have to go by. Theodora had written that night, accepting Dr. Montague's invitation, and departed in cold silence the next day.
I have feelings about that passage.
Okay.
As far as the roommate, I think that is Theodore's girlfriend. Because a lot of times, especially with like, back in the 1800s, if you have two people of the same gender that are romantically involved, they call them roommates or just really close friends. And I also feel that way because if I had a roommate that I was just friends with and we got into a big argument over that, I wouldn't ever want to be friends with them again. I wouldn't even consider getting over it and having a future of friendship. But if it was someone I was in a relationship with, I'd be willing to work through it.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Right. Even today, like we live in a pretty conservative place. But even today, when we talk about like gay couples and stuff, like sometimes that's how they'll say it. That's her friend or his friend. Right. I've heard that thing before just living here. Um, so yeah. Would you smash the stuff somebody gave you? Right. If it was just your friend, right? If it wasn't a lover's quarrel, right? Probably not.
Exactly. And one thing I'm a little bit not worried about, but apprehensive about, I hope that they don't sum Theodore's character up to just being a lesbian. I hope that's not like the central point of her character, because a lot of times in writing, that's what happens. That can't just be one part of who you are. That literally is who you are.
Yeah, I'm rereading it with you all, but that's something to keep in mind. I don't think Jackson does that. I think she makes it a part of her character, but that doesn't define her character necessarily. That's actually what I had a problem with the TV show over. Like I thought that was trying to say, oh, this is her character, right? Her sexuality. Right. So, but again, maybe I judged that too soon after just one episode. But I can say for a fact that the '90s movie, when they portrayed that character, that's all they made it. Like they made Catherine Zeta-Jones and it was like flamboyant lesbian in the '90s movie. So, so yeah. One of the things that I like about the passage, besides the insinuation about the roommate, is I love how she puts in parentheses. Perhaps the wakened knowledge in Theodora, which told her the names of symbols on cards held out of sight, urged her on her way toward Hill House. Right. So this is the narrator just saying, perhaps. Right. That's her ESP abilities, which caused her to accept the invitation. Right. I like that. I like how the narrator even kind of leaves it up to the imagination. Maybe this is why she accepted the ESP and correctly guessing all those cards. Right. That seems like that's an uncanny ability that she has as well.
Statistically, that should be impossible.
Right. Yeah, just think about the probability 20 cards, correctly guessing 18 of them out of 20. This numbers have to be minuscule. I never took statistics class. I couldn't give you the exact numbers. My bad. Yeah, we get light banter between her and Eleanor once they both meet each other at the house. Eleanor seems kind of threatened by Theodora in many ways. She's not used to someone this open, um, someone this outspoken. Her, even someone who seems this confident in herself. She's not used to that. So that's part of their dynamic that we are noticing pretty early. Then, of course, we get the Dr. Montague character, um, the professor. We learn that he's an anthropologist. He gets his PhD in anthropology just because he thinks that's the only academic field that will give him legitimacy to chase ghosts. He's the researcher. We find out that all these people are like guinea pigs for him to test to test how fear works in the mind and all this type of stuff. So like all these characters, Theodora, Eleanor, and Luke, they're pretty much there at his behest as guinea pigs in this scientific experiment he's conducting.
Do you guys think that I know there was like a little bit of a tension between them when they wanted to know why they were there and what the exact reason was, but do you think that he kind of ruined I'm trying to think of the word. Shoot. The believability of the project and the experiment by telling them the history of the house and the ghost implications and whatnot?
Yeah, if we're talking about like a peer review, like if he was submitting this for a journal, an academic journal, right? It went through the peer review process. I think that would almost instantly get it thrown out of consideration in a scientific journal, right? Because you're influencing your subjects, right? You're influencing the experiment in some way. So it's a classic case of you guys. You get what I'm saying here, Nicole? Yeah.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah, he's influencing the test subjects. Okay, so I think that's one reason why that it would get thrown out of a scientific journal. I ever tell you guys that did I tell you guys in English 101 that story about the guy who tried to prove the soul exists? Did I tell you that story, Nicole?
By the weight and how it was like point something different. Yeah, you did.
Yeah, that's a fun experiment. Basically, just to fill Lauren in, there was this experiment at the beginning of the 20th century where this guy said, I can prove through science that the soul exists. So what he would do would be he would weigh people right before they, like literally the moment before they died, then the moment after they died. He accounted for things like bodily fluids and gas and all that leaving the body. And he found out that each time it was 20 grams. The body lost 20 grams of weight. He claimed that was the soul leaving the body. Right. So he said that the soul weighs 20 grams. Right. It's never been repeated as an experiment because scientists didn't take it seriously. They thought it was creepy and unethical, things like that. So, fun little fact for you there, Lauren. Duncan McDougall was the scientist's name. If you're curious, you can Google it. I always like telling future medical students that story. They usually get a kick out of it.
When you told that in English 101, it was pretty much crickets, wasn't it?
That whole class was crickets. English 101 is just not a class that's easily taught on Zoom, I don't think. That's a class you need to be in person for. This class isn't. We make this class work on Zoom because it's mostly discussion.
I don't think I ever saw the face of another student last semester in my English 101 class.
You didn't. Who'd you take for that, Lauren? You didn't have me.
I was on Zoom with the Logan campus, so I had Tasheen Fran, I think's her name, Erfran.
Right. Yeah, she used to be the teacher at Wyoming campus a long time ago. I think when I was going to school, I didn't go to Southern, but when I was going to college, I think she was the main person at Wyoming County. Yeah, that class and Zoom just don't mix. This I don't think that was a rough semester last semester.
I think if they wanted to make it work, they could have made it work.
Now you know how it goes. That's a class everybody has to take and doesn't want to take. So 102 is a class that more people take out of their own free will, I suppose. Same for movies, right? The movie class that we're in. I even like our literature class this semester, Nicole, the 200. I think that's a good class too.
I like it too. I wish, like Hannah, I went to high school with Hannah. I wish she would speak up some, but
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah, that's how she is, though. I've had her in a bunch of classes. She's pretty shy. I don't even egg her on because I know she's shy.
She's not as bad in person.
Well, I think we did a lot today and setting up the novel. As far as what to do for next time, let me see here. We read about 67 pages today. Novel is 182 pages. Let's see how we can divvy this up really quick.
I don't know about y'all's version, but mine has 9 big parts with a smaller section in it. So I started by reading 1 through 3. I don't know if we were supposed to read all the way through 4 or just 2, 4.
Yeah,
I did the same thing. I only read 2, 3. Well, I read through 3 to 4.
Yeah, I think I asked you guys for today to read through 3, so you guys were all right. Do 4 through 4. Sections 4 and 5 are a little longer. Do section 4 and 5 for next class. And then we'll wrap it up next Thursday. Okay, so 4 and 5. All right. We'll see you guys next time.